Derrick, how you doing today?
I'm good, Bernie. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Did you get any rest? Sleep?
Yeah. I drove, so I had a little bit more flexibility on my schedule than say usual because when you have to fly. But yeah, so I was able to leave Cincinnati this morning at a reasonable hour after finishing a coffee, not racing to the airport. So yeah.
I was saying earlier, the Cardinals, I think, certainly, if they were feeling a little tired or whatever, I mean, they certainly deserve that. I mean, they've played very intense schedule in August, a lot of games packed into, relatively few days, and really intense competitions against some big time teams, and just having to grind out victories, which they have. So, I guess I wasn't surprised that they really had to fight to win that series, but they did, and I think that reflects well on them. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things is while you're kind of in it, you don't realize what the travel's like. And I was looking at it yesterday, and it was 17 games in 16 days, 5 different cities, all 4 time zones. And I was like, you know what? Maybe that explains it. Oliver Marmol last night goes, I don't play, and I'm exhausted. And I kind of had that sensation, like, yeah, I don't play, I don't do anything. But man, this I'm really dragging. Just really trying to, find a rhythm a little bit. And you go, well, that's why. You're crisscrossing. Colorado was when it started. It was when that streak of games started, and that felt like eons ago. So yeah, and then the Reds were going to play them tough. I think, they threw a lot of different guys at them. The Cardinals really didn't get the quality starting pitching that they expect, and so it was kind of just a grind to get through the game after that. They had the one game where they scored a lot of runs. They had the next game where they didn't score any runs. So you just kind of had this, like, the series didn't really have any flow to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. No, it absolutely does. I'm sorry for hesitating because there's a couple things I want to talk to you. I'm just trying to figure out which one I want to choose. I should have decided that before you came on.
It's all right. We can workshop this. Let's do both.
Right. I think this offense, needless to say, reached a new level in August because of Marmol's managing. Yeah, the home runs, also Marmol putting those on base machines at the top of the order, which really got things rolling. Plus, it's deeper with Pujols being what Pujols is, with O'Neill stirring. And I know there's a couple dead spots, obviously, but all of a sudden it's a very deep and dangerous lineup. My question is, natural question, how sustainable is that?
Well, I mean, a lot of it is going to hinge on Tyler O'Neill being Tyler O'Neill. A lot of it is going to hinge on the Donovan Nootbaar continuing to be OBP monsters. What Nootbaar is doing is very impressive. Because he had the home run last night. He takes his walks. I mean, that's an overlooked part. You talk about all the things that went on in that game. I mean, Nootbaar had a remarkable game. Didn't play but half of it, but had a really strong game. A couple walks and the home run. And this is like what he's done is, he's become kind of that classic take the pitch that I can't do anything with and it's not a strike, and then bring them back into the strike zone and scare them out of it, as hitting coaches like to say. Nootbaar is doing that very well. Donovan works at bats. He's got a really, really savvy, I guess you probably would say seasoned approach at the plate. And what that does is it really gives teams fits because they can't avoid ball culture. Sometimes the best protection comes ahead of a hitter with there's nowhere to put them. And so the combination of those guys being on base and Arenado finding his groove, I mean, he might win Player of the Month. One of those guys will, unless they all three split the vote. But with him finding his groove again, that really allowed Paul Goldschmidt to flourish. And when Paul struggled in Cincinnati, they didn't lose the series. Other people carried it. But I think, they need to have some kind of threat beyond the duo. And Albert Pujols has been that guy this past month. Tyler O'Neill probably needs to be that guy in September for this offense to have some staying power. Otherwise, look, if that on base drifts or there isn't that other threat there, Bernie, then the spots that, were 0 for 36 and Molina in the lineup, then those start to look less like speed bumps and more like anchors on a lineup.
Derrick, what do you think of the job Ollie is doing? I think that, maybe some people would say, well, what he did with the lineup is an obvious thing to do, but you and I have been watching baseball a long time, and we know that there are always so-called obvious things to do that the manager never does. This guy does, and he's very creative. He's really creative with his bullpen usage, too. I just continue to be really impressed with him. And the thing of it is, every now and then I'm gonna rate. I'm gonna say, what is he doing? What is he thinking? I don't understand that. That kind of thing. Because you really are impressed by a manager, it doesn't mean that you will always, rave and praise everything he does. But this guy's really good, and he's a rookie manager. I mean, that makes it even more impressive.
I think one of the things that really stands out to me is the ownership and delegation that he's given his coaches and the relationship that has come with that. Some of it is the relationship, too, that has come with the players, some of whom, let's remind folks, are older than Marmol, many of whom have been in the majors longer than Marmol. I think, he has really just stripped away any of the euphemisms and any of the coach speak and any of the platitudes and vagaries and niceties. He is just blunt, direct, has no time to just, dance around the topic because he'd rather just talk about the topic. Like Dakota Hudson. Dakota Hudson, they got a decision to come up with, and they are wrestling with what to do. They know Flaherty's going to take that next start Monday, depending on how he recovers today. But, there's no indication that he is slowed up or anything like that he won't be ready to go Monday. Well, what does that mean for Dakota Hudson? Well, in their estimation, Jake Woodford has pitched better than Dakota Hudson. But Dakota Hudson has done a lot of what they've asked, and he just he wasn't able to repeat the results. So does Woodford leapfrog Hudson? Do neither of them stay in the rotation? Do they pair Woodford with Flaherty so that they have a long reliever and then have Woodford set to go for that doubleheader? And then what to make of Hudson? I think, this past yesterday, Marmol had a similar conversation, a private conversation with Dylan Carlson, saying, okay, this is what's been going on this past week. Let me show you how I make a lineup. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm – and, he, took Dylan through it all. Agree, disagree. It wasn't Dylan's place. But Ollie was like, this is what I'm thinking, and here's how you get back into it against right-handed pitching. Here's how you get back into it. It's not going to be tomorrow. It might be a week from now, and then you're going to get a run. But it might not be this September either. It'll a lot depend on the performance of other guys. It's not solely based on you. And I think, that kind of conversation with players it's honest, it's direct. They know that Ollie's going to say the same thing, likely to the media. And that's given them a little – it's just they don't have to play politics with him. Similarly, you think about the notion of what, like, Lincoln did with his cabinet, right, that whole team of rivals.
Right.
Similarly, you got a bunch of coaches, all of whom are – most of whom are from the Cardinals way, right? You got Stubby and Pop and Willie and Skip Schumacher as well. But they also have aspirations of being managers. Some of them have either interviewed for positions or want to be manager in the future. Skip Schumacher comes to mind. And the work they've done, look no further than Monday night, where they were dealing with a bullpen game for the Reds, and how, like, just almost like a pit crew that dugout operated. You know, flipping iPads, setting up video, laying out charts. They're there. Okay, Turner Ward is going to hitters who need to hear from him. Turner Ward is not going to hitters who want to seek out on their own. Skip Schumacher, hey, you got what you need. They weren't overlapping. They weren't sending different messages. There was a choreography to it that you could see. You could watch it happen because the pitcher was changing every inning, and so they were doing it every inning. And it was really something just to kind of, you know, one could look up from the keyboard and kind of see just the structure in place to provide the coaching and how it was not only like in tune, but it was in tune with the players. And then you go to Wednesday, and, you know, Ollie found me last night as the team was leaving, and he said, hey, you need to, like, know that Stubby came to me this afternoon. And he walked into my office, and he goes, let's talk about five-man infield. Let's talk about the best way to do it, how we can do that with our personnel, what makes sense. And, you know, then a few hours later, that's what they're doing. And he made sure that, you know, that I knew so that I could put it publicly, that Stubby was the one who said, look, with the guys that we have right now, Brendan Donovan's versatility, how do we want to do a five-man infield if we ever need to? And there it was for them to do it. You know, the coaches aren't waiting to be told to do something. They feel they have ownership and the advocacy and an ally and also a challenger in Ollie to go do it. Skip Schumacher, similar type of thing. I mean, you're just talking about like some really strong personalities that are on the coaching staff, and they're in harmony, and the manager gets credit for that.
Derrick Goold with us. By the way, please follow him on Twitter at @dgoold, Goold. As we move forward, getting into September, what issues would you identify with this Cardinals team that either are a problem or could become one potentially?
I think you don't ignore the fact that the past three games did not feature a starter getting out in the sixth inning because of the trickle-down effect that has on the bullpen. We know that. The bullpen really seems to be in a good spot, but I'll get to it in a second. And you don't want to upset that. You know, Woodford is a huge role the other night in what he did. It set them up to be in excellent shape to win that extra inning game last night. Defense did it, but the bullpen being available and having a lot of length, Palante pitching as far as he could, you know, that you can trace back to what Woodford did the previous night in relief of Dakota Hudson. So I think, you know, the starters not when the starters aren't cranking out quality starts. And yeah, it comes at the tail end of a long stretch, but you know what? They got another long stretch coming. And then they still got that West Coast swing to do that goes San Diego, LA, and then ends in Milwaukee. And that could be the Brewers' last stand, really, that whole week. You know, so I think when the starters aren't going deeper, it makes them vulnerable. It makes them vulnerable to losing series. It makes them vulnerable to a losing streak. It makes them vulnerable on that long road trip, which would then give Brewers a chance after they host New York for a week to get back into the race. I think they are in an interesting spot, again, somewhat related to the Brewers, with their left-handed relief. You know, they have two guys, Zach Thompson, who hit 99 with his fastball the other night from the left side, and Jojo Romero, who had his first high-leverage appearance last night and pitched really well.
He sure did.
Very well. Has pitched very well for the Cardinals in four appearances. But they, you know, neither of them are surefire back-to-back guys. Thompson didn't really respond well to pitching him back-to-back or being asked to pitch him back-to-back. They're going to be cautious for Romero. He's not too far removed. He's kind of still in that window of recovery from Tommy John surgery. So their lefties are a little different than, you know, you normally have it set up. First of all, they're both still relatively new, having been thrust into these roles in the past 2 weeks. Second, you know, is that how do you manage? It's one more complication for the Cardinals. How do you manage if you don't want to go back-to-back with them? Does that mean that they go multiples and get rest? How do you target that? 3-batter minimum, all that kind of stuff. It's not really a setup that they've had before, and I think that will be really interesting, if Genesis isn't able to come back, or if Genesis isn't able to get sharp in Memphis,
right.
Come back. And I think the other part of it is, where does Flaherty fit? What does Flaherty bring? A strong Jack Flaherty, can we say vintage Jack Flaherty? A 2019 Jack Flaherty radically changes the look of the National League race. I don't think there's any other way to say it.
I agree.
It's not going to change the standings, but it'll change the look of the playoffs in a short series. But a searching or mediocre Jack Flaherty, it just puts the Cardinals in a tough spot to make another decision. They become the college football team without a starting quarterback. If you say you have 3, do you really have 1?
I want to ask you, we obviously know what the issue is with Dylan Carlson, not very good against right-handed pitchers. I am surprised that it's kind of regressed to this way. I mean, he was pretty good against them last year. It took him a while, but he finished on the plus side against right-handed pitchers. Like when you, at the end of the year, you look up that kind of thing, and he's weighted runs created plus. He was in the plus category. So
yeah.
But so I'm really surprised the way it's kind of gone off the cliff. What do you think's happened there? Is it a confidence issue? Is it there's a hole that the pitchers have found, and he hasn't been able to figure out how to close that hole, and which also kind of surprises me in a way, only because I respect him, because I think he's really smart and mature for his age. So I'm a little surprised that it's gotten to this spot that it's in. So anyway, sorry for the long question. You know what I'm saying, though.
Yeah, no, I think you hit on it. I mean, he's struggling against elevated fastballs, and it's putting him at a spot where he's putting weak contact on breaking balls. I think the team saw an approach that worked, and they've stuck with it. You said, you made the point that he was good last year. I mean, look, a month ago he was really good. He was on this really strong stretch, left, right side, didn't matter. And then you did have a precipitous kind of drop as it kind of coincided where they saw more left-handed pitching. As Pujols was taking off, you kind of see Dylan struggle against right-handed. They're facing a lot of lefties at the time. He got a good swing. He still has a really strong swing, strong production against lefties. But the righties, in this age of elevation and avoiding launch angle, they've just really had success against him. And he hasn't been able to. There's a similarity, right? Like, he looks a little bit like what Nootbaar did at the beginning of this year, and Nootbaar was able to correct it and adjust it. And you see what he's done since, and that's where Dylan has to get. That's what Dylan is trying to get to now. They gave him some time, not off. I mean, they didn't hide it. I mean, he was a healthy scratch, I guess. Righties here for a good stretch, only a couple starts over the past week. But they hope that he'd use that time to work in the cage and to work on this. I talked to Jeff Albert, talked to Ali Marmol about this over the past week, and they said, he's in there, and they got a clear idea how to make it happen. And I asked Marmol 2 questions. One, was there a comparison between Woodford and what they asked him to do with his slider, and what they're asking Dylan to do to adjust to give him more sustainability from the left side of the plate? And Marmol said the biggest distinction to make is, excuse me,
sure,
is that Dylan has done it at the major league level. And then I asked, do you have to consider having him not be a switch hitter anymore? And Marmol said that isn't even on their mind. That's not on the table. That hasn't even been thought.
I'm glad you asked that. That's a good question to ask, and I know that's been on my mind a little bit too. So now we know. Hey, one more thing, unless there's something else that you feel we should talk about. I'm a little erratic today, Derrick, so you can intervene and get my brain back in order or something. Anyway, tell us how the expanded roster is going to work. We know it's 28. Flaherty's going to get one of the spots. What's the timing of that, though? And what position player appears to be the choice as you look at it?
Well, so they're going to do a couple different things, and one of the reasons why is Yepez and Flaherty. Yepez isn't eligible to come back because remember he had that one-day appearance. So without an injury, he still has to serve a minimum amount of time down there. They eyeball him as a guy that they'd like to bring up. There is a limit on pitchers, 14-14 is how it's split for 28. You do get a 29th guy now for the doubleheader that they have coming up. They were talking about having some guys join for the weekend and then making a move for Yepez when he's eligible, and then putting Flaherty on Monday, waiting to do that. And there was a report earlier today, Robert Murray, I believe it was, reported that DeLuzio is coming up. One of the things that the Cardinals have been kicking around is using that spot kind of for a specialist. He'd be a speedster guy, like an Adron Chambers of years ago, if you think about it. You're going to see, I think Billy Hamilton was picked up today. You're going to see a few different moves like that from teams as they go for, they kind of just get like that targeted special guy that they think they need for one kind of job. And a lot of time that's a speedster, a guy who is a pinch runner, that kind of stuff. So
Adron Chambers.
That. Yeah, the guys are they're thinking about that possible move with Senya Pez on the horizon. And if you want to ask about Burleson, we can talk about Burleson.
Well, is it? I don't think he's a factor, right? I mean, I'm not going to say that I've forgotten about him, but it's kind of been out of mind lately. What do you got on that?
So he's had a really impressive year. Walker's gotten a lot of publicity, as he should. Alec Burleson is really producing at the highest level. He's gonna be a part of the Cardinals conversations all winter and going into next season. But he doesn't need to be protected, meaning he's not Rule 5 eligible this year. So him on the roster means leaving somebody else off. That's where they're at. And, if he's going to come up and be a part-time guy, they don't want to lose that roster spot when they can protect somebody else. Like a Paniagua, for example, who's had a remarkable year, is Rule 5 eligible. And has he done what he's done at a low enough level that a team won't take him, thinking that they can keep him on the roster all year? Well, the Cardinals thought that about Luis Perdomo, and he's gone.
Right.
He went to the Padres. So Paniagua's had a very impressive year. Again, it's lower levels, but he's rising. You got a few other of these relievers. You got some guys who they've already put on, like the Walshes and Palantes of the world, who obviously they're not going to take off, but roster spots for protecting guys are premium, and they're not going to use one when it makes the choice. So I get where fans are coming from, but the question that Burleson forces fans and the team to answer is, if you put him on, who is the prospect that you're not protecting and that you're leaving available for a Rule 5 selection?
My friend Derrick Goold, thank you. A good long chat. I appreciate that very much, and we look forward to next week's visit from you. Thanks.
Long homestand
Thank you.
Well, a lot of home games ahead. I guess there's the Pirates Island there, but a lot of home games.
It's true. Well, thank you very much. Safe travels.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Bernie.
Thank you, Derrick. That's the best. Derrick Goold with us.